Silence is often mistaken for absence, an empty space where nothing is happening. Yet, let me ask you, what if silence is not the void, but the source? Imagine a room filled with people talking, debating, performing, each voice rising in search of dominance. Now observe the one who says nothing. The crowd thinks him powerless, but they do not notice. All their words orbit his silence. Here lies the contradiction. No one wants to see. Those who cannot detach from the noise are ruled by it. Those who master silence command the very atmosphere. You have been taught that power is displayed in words, decisions, gestures, but true power is invisible. It is restraint when you wish to react. It is poise when you wish to break. The world is moved by those who can remain unmoved. Today, I invite you to question everything you think you know about control. For in the pages ahead, you will find that your greatest leverage lies not in what you say or do, but in what you refuse to let disturb your inner stillness. Are you ready to enter the paradox and find the real source of power? The noise is not you. It pounds at your door with headlines. It shouts through the walls with opinions, demands, arguments, outrage, always searching, always prowling, hunting for one thing, access to your mind. The noise is relentless. It is cunning. It will take any shape, seize any channel, crawl through any crack in your boundaries, just to win a moment of your attention. Yet here is the truth you were never told. The noise is not you. It never was. You arrived in a world already roaring. Long before you found your own words, the air was thick with the words of others. Before you ever understood what it meant to be yourself, the world had already stamped you with its own labels, pushed you into a part you never auditioned for. And from that moment on, you were trained to react. React to criticism, react to praise, react to threats, chaos, crisis, trends, expectations, react, react, react. So you did, because that's what the world demanded. And now deep down you are tired. You are worn out by the performance, exhausted by the endless echo of everything outside yourself. And yet, this is the exact point where your real path can finally begin. There is something vital you must see. The more you react to the world's noise, the more you lose contact with your own center. Each reaction pulls you a little further from yourself, scattering your focus, diffusing your energy, making you a stranger in your own life. But silence, true silence, isn't about the absence of sound. It is the absence of inner confusion. It is what remains when you stop giving the world the power to pull your strings. Imagine what happens when you stop jumping at every provocation, stop flinching at every loud opinion, stop letting every urgent demand jerk you out of your peace. When you ignore the drama that was never yours to begin with, when you let other people's storms rage on without opening your window, you discover something that terrifies the weak and liberates the disciplined. You discover space. In that space, something profound emerges. You begin to hear the only voice that ever mattered, your own. Not the voice of ego, not the voice of fear or insecurity, but the voice beneath all of that. The calm, steady, quietly confident voice that waits patiently for you to remember it exists. The world wants you frantic and confused, always on edge, always desperate to be understood, always jumping to explain or defend or win approval. But the truth is, power is not found in the noise. It is not found in the desperate scramble to be heard, to be seen, to be validated. Real power is forged in restraint. It is the discipline to let the world's noise roar without inviting it inside. It is the ability to hold your own ground, to stay unmoved by the storms outside, and, more importantly, by the tempests of doubt and anxiety that the world tries to stir up within you. So stop dancing to the world's drumbeat of panic and urgency. Let it pound and scream. Let it spin itself into confusion. You do not have to join the frenzy. You are not a puppet on a string. You do not owe the world your reaction, your energy, or your peace. Stand in your silence. Let it be your shield and your strength. Because true calm is not an absence of noise, it is the presence of inner command. In a world obsessed with being loud, become the rare soul who rules themselves quietly. You are not the noise. You are silence, walking. Emotions are invitations, not commanders. Your anger urges you to lash out, to defend, to prove you are not to be crossed. Your sadness pleads with you to lay down your arms, to yield, to slip beneath the waves and disappear. Your fear whispers for you to turn away, to retreat, to escape before the darkness finds you. But understand this: these are only invitations, not commands. They rise up strong within you, sometimes boiling, sometimes cold and hollow, but they are not the law. They are not the truth of who you are. They are echoes powerful, persuasive, but ultimately just echoes of past pain, old stories, moments you once survived. Emotions arrive with force. They demand your attention. The body tightens, the heart pounds, the mind spins with justifications and stories. In those moments, it feels as if the emotion is everything that it is you, speaking with your voice, choosing your actions, steering your life. But this is the oldest illusion there is. For an emotion is not a verdict. It is a weather pattern passing through the landscape of your mind. If you act without question, if you let each emotion write your script, you do not choose. You repeat. You relive the same stories, the same wounds, the same tired cycles. You call it honesty, passion, being true to yourself, but really, you are ruled by something you do not control. True freedom begins the moment you see the difference. You are not your anger. You are not your sadness. You are not your fear. You are the awareness beneath them all. The quiet observer who sees anger rise and says, "Yes, I see you, but you are not my master." The calm witness who feels sadness descend and knows, this is not the end. This is just a wave passing through. The steady mind that feels fear's icy hand but chooses not to let it steer the ship. Most people live at the mercy of every mood and feeling. If happiness enters, they glow for a moment. If anger comes, they burn and scorch those closest. If sorrow visits, they collapse and surrender to despair. They call this authenticity, but it is simply obedience to whatever emotion is loudest. But what if your highest calling is not to obey your moods, but to see them clearly and choose the wisest response, regardless of their intensity? This is the beginning of true emotional detachment, not coldness, not repression, not pretending to feel nothing, but mastery. The power to acknowledge every feeling, to give it a respectful nod, and then decide how you will act, based not on reflex, but on reason. It is the rare skill to stand in the heat of your anger and refuse to lash out, to carry your sadness with dignity without collapsing beneath it, to walk side by side with your fear, yet not let it hold the map. You become the flame's keeper, not its victim. You do not stamp out your fire, nor do you let it consume you. You hold the torch. You light the way for yourself and perhaps for others lost in their own storms. This is the mark of true command, not to be empty of feeling, but to be full of choice, not to be unmoved, but to be unruled. Emotional detachment is not the absence of fire, it is the presence of a hand steady enough to carry it forward, lighting the dark with every step. This is how you move from being someone set aflame by every passing emotion to someone who brings light, calm, clear, unwavering wherever you go. When you detach, you begin to see. Attachment is a velvet blindfold. It comforts you, whispers purpose into your ear, wraps itself around your longing, and calls itself love. It makes loyalty feel like a virtue, strength feel like staying, hope feel like gripping tighter. But what if it's only blinding you? Because when you cling too tightly to a person, to an outcome, to a belief, you lose the ability to see it clearly. The edges blur. You no longer witness reality. You witness your wish for reality. You paint over flaws. You ignore the ache. You interpret the wounds as signs that you simply need to try harder, give more, endure longer. But pain, when repeated, is not a lesson in resilience. It's often a lesson in blindness. You pour yourself into what cannot hold you. You wait for change that never comes. You stay loyal to what only takes, never gives. Not because you are weak, but because you are attached, and attachment, for a while, feels like purpose. It gives your suffering meaning, your sacrifice nobility, your waiting the illusion of virtue. But purpose born of attachment is a house built on sand. Detachment is not abandonment. It is not coldness. It is not a severing of all ties or a hardening of the heart. It is the slow, painful act of removing the blindfold, of stepping back, even if only by a single breath, to see what is truly there, not what you hope is there or need to be there, but what actually remains when hope and need are quiet. In detachment, vision returns. You begin to see the patterns that held you hostage. You feel the cost of your compromises, the weight you carried to keep something broken afloat. You remember the freedom you once had, before you decided happiness must come only through one door. Clarity rushes in, and it hurts. It shows you every place you lied to yourself, every moment you called a sinking ship destiny, every time you traded your peace for proximity. But in that ache is a gift, the gift of sight, and sight is the seed of power. When you see without distortion, you choose without delusion. You stop grasping, you stop begging, you stop calling self-betrayal hope. You let go of the cup with holes, the phone that never brings comfort, the ship that can only drown you. Detachment is not disconnection from life. It is reconnection to the truth. And truth is the foundation that will never betray you. From this ground, you rebuild not the fantasy you chased, but the self you lost, not a castle in the clouds, but a home in your own soul. This is where real strength lives, not in holding on, but in seeing clearly and letting go. The enemy lives inside the reaction. They said something designed to wound. They cast their words like stones, sharp and deliberate. Maybe they ridiculed you in front of others, tried to strip you of your dignity, or threw their bitterness at your feet, hoping you would slip. Now, you feel it, a surge of heat in your chest, a tremor in your hands, that familiar electric urge to lash back and settle the score. But pause. Right here, this is the battleground. Not out there, in the realm of noise and petty voices, but inside you. This is where the real war is waged and won. Because the true enemy is never their words. It's not the insult, the public slight, the attempt to provoke. The true enemy is how easily you might become their mirror, how quickly you let their ugliness shape your own form. It is the speed at which you let yourself be pulled off center, away from your ground and into the mud. Anyone can maintain their composure when met with kindness. Anyone can appear unshakable when their value is affirmed, their boundaries honored, their presence respected. But who are you when all that is stripped away? Who are you when respect is replaced by scorn? That's where your strength is tested. That's the moment you meet yourself. Reaction is surrender. It is the moment you let someone else dictate your state, your thoughts, your self-respect. They push, you flinch. They mock, You spit fire. They win because you have allowed their chaos to set the rules of engagement. To be easily provoked is to be easily owned. You do not need chains on your wrists or bars on your windows to be imprisoned. You only need to hand over the keys to your mood. Let anyone with sharp words unlock your anger, your bitterness, your need to retaliate. So make a new covenant with yourself. No one else commands the tides within you. No one else decides when you rise or break, when you burn or freeze. You belong to yourself, not to the provocations, not to the noise, not to the judgments hurled in the dark. You will not be ruled by mood swings. You will not let an insult pull the strings of your dignity. You will not fight on ground chosen by those who thrive on chaos. This is not passivity. This is precision. You do not retreat. You choose your ground. Your silence in the face of noise is not a retreat, but a warning. It says, I see your game, but I do not play by your rules. You do not earn my reaction. You do not command my peace. Let others flinch and bark and spiral into the chaos they worship. Let them believe victory is in the noise, in the frantic swing. You will remain stone, still, sharp, and undefeated. You are not here to be mastered by anyone's mood, not even your own. You are here to stand where others fall, to hold your line when others surrender theirs. That is true power. That is the victory no insult can ever touch. Stillness is a weapon. Stillness is not the absence of force or the lack of motion or the quiet surrender of will. Stillness is readiness, a living, breathing tension held beneath the surface. It is the coiled spring, waiting for the precise moment to unleash its power. It is the held breath, perfectly timed before the plunge. It is the bowstring drawn back, silent but brimming with force, needing only the right instant to release. Yet the world taught you to mistrust this. It equates noise with strength, chaos with action, volume with value. The world rewards the loudest voice in the room, the first hand raised, the fastest reaction. It teaches you that presence is proved by movement, that significance comes from being seen and heard at all times. But this is the great deception. Because true power doesn't parade itself. True power is not measured by decibels, by frantic motion, by the noise of constant reaction. True power does not need to announce itself. It simply waits, poised, prepared, disciplined, fully available when the moment demands. Consider the master swordsman. He does not leap into every fight, swinging wildly, desperate to prove his skill. His sword remains in its sheath, his posture unbroken, his eyes reading every movement. The true swordsman is not the one who strikes first, but the one who waits until the strike matters most. Consider the lion. The savannah trembles not at its roar, but at its silence. The lion does not waste its energy in endless chase. It stalks. It waits. It moves with perfect timing, conserving strength for when it counts. Or consider the mind that does not rush to fill the silence with words, the mind that resists the urge to be understood and instead observes to truly understand. Such a mind is not empty. It is full of focus, gathering insight while others spill their thoughts on the ground. Stillness is this, and more. Stillness is potential energy, not yet spent, waiting for purpose. It is power kept in reserve while others exhaust themselves reacting to every disturbance, every provocation, every fleeting emotion. Most people burn through their strength in an endless cycle of reaction. They answer every insult, meet every challenge, leap at every opportunity, never realizing how much of their force is wasted on what does not matter. They believe movement is proof of life, noise is proof of worth, and to wait is to lose. But nothing could be further from the truth. Stillness is not idleness. It is discipline in its purest form. It is the wisdom to act only when the time is right, not when it is tempting, not when the crowd demands it, but when it will make the greatest impact. That is why stillness is dangerous. It sharpens the edge. It turns restraint into a weapon. While others flail, you calculate. While others panic, you prepare. While others wear themselves out, you become sharper, steadier, more dangerous with every moment. Anyone can throw a punch in anger or fear. Anyone can blurt out a thought or rush into action. But it takes mastery to hold your posture, to choose your moment, to wait even when your whole body wants to move. So let them call you cold. Let them mistake your quiet for weakness, your patience for passivity, your silence for absence. Let them talk. Let them underestimate you, because the still blade is often the sharpest, and when it moves, it cuts deeper and truer than any wild swing ever could. In a world addicted to noise, movement, and impulsive displays, remember, victory belongs to the one who waits. Stillness is not defeat. Stillness is power, perfectly preserved, unleashed only for what truly matters. And in the end, the one who holds their ground in silence is the one who decides the outcome. Detach not to escape, but to reclaim power. There comes a moment when the weight of holding on becomes impossible to ignore, not because you are fragile, not because the years have worn you down, but because, finally, your eyes have adjusted to the light of truth. Every day spent clinging to what cannot be changed. Every hour poured into battles that were never truly yours costs you fragments of your spirit that you will never get back. It takes courage to recognize this. It takes clarity. You must see, with uncompromising honesty, the lines you have crossed for the sake of loyalty, the boundaries you have blurred for the sake of harmony, the pieces of yourself you've bartered away just to keep someone afloat. You wake up to the reality that letting go is not defeat, but the first act of reclaiming your life. Detachment is often misunderstood by those who have never tasted its freedom. People label it as retreat, as surrender, as indifference, a coldness that belongs to the weary and the cynical. But you know differently. Detachment is not about building walls or abandoning love or retreating into numbness. It is a controlled burn. It is the deliberate, careful removal of what is no longer nourishing, so that your energy is not wasted, feeding what cannot ever return the favor. You cut away not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You release your grip on what is draining you, not because you wish it harm, but because you will not bleed for anything that will not help you grow. You step back, not because you are running away, but because you finally see that presence is not about proximity. It is about authenticity, showing up whole, rather than showing up hollowed out by sacrifice. When you release what you cannot control, you liberate your own hands free, at last to build, to heal, to create, to hold what is real. You reclaim your power by refusing to waste it. You turn down the world's volume so you can hear your own judgment, your own quiet wisdom, the voice that has always known the way forward. And in that sacred silence, you rise. You learn the subtle art of discernment. You realize that not every invitation to an argument requires your presence. You discover that not every accusation demands a defense, and not every apology deserves your attention. You see your mind for what it is, a sanctuary, not a dumping ground for the world's noise, grievances, and expectations. This is how you become formidable. You become difficult to manipulate, impossible to guilt, untouchable by those who once knew exactly how to twist your heartstrings. Because when you no longer need anything from those around you, you are free from their influence. You become the rarest force, a person who stands by choice, not by obligation. Detachment is not escape. It is the highest form of presence. It is standing firm in your own reality, eyes open, heart unburdened by fantasy or fear. You are fully here, in this moment, with nothing tethering you to old stories or false hopes. You carry no chains. You bow to no pressure. And those around you can sense it. They feel the shift in your energy, the unwavering calm, the self-command, the silent strength. You are no longer baited into storms you did not cause. You are no longer seduced by the need to be right, to be needed, to be heard. You are simply here, fully, calmly, free. And that, more than anything, is what makes you powerful. The less you explain, the more you command. There comes a point in your journey where explaining yourself starts to feel futile, like pouring water into sand. Every effort at clarity vanishes without trace, no matter how honest, thoughtful, or vulnerable your words. They disappear into people who were never interested in understanding you in the first place. It's not misunderstanding. It's a wall, a refusal, a deliberate deafness that has nothing to do with your ability to communicate and everything to do with their willingness to receive. And so, you stop explaining. You stop offering up your reasons as if they were gifts to be appraised. You stop justifying the boundaries you draw or apologizing for the space you need. You stop announcing what you will or won't accept, as if permission were required for you to own your own life. You simply act. You move with quiet conviction. You protect what is yours. You live out your decisions instead of defending them. You let your boundaries exist, unannounced, unbending, and something remarkable happens in that silence. Your presence begins to speak louder than any explanation ever could. Those who once thrived on your emotional responses suddenly encounter a barrier they cannot breach. Those who once depended on your endless explanations now find themselves hungry for understanding that never arrives. Those who were used to you showing up to absorb, soothe, or explain away their discomfort are forced to face the emptiness of their own behavior. Your silence holds up a mirror, and many will turn away from what they see. The less you explain, the more uneasy the world becomes, because your quiet withdrawal forces people to confront themselves. In the absence of your explanations, they are left alone with their own narratives, their own motives, their own shadows. And not everyone is ready for that reflection. Let them be confused. Let them fill in the blanks with whatever stories help them sleep at night. Let them invent motives, misread your silence, or call you distant. That is their work, not yours. You do not owe the world the comfort of your clarity. You do not exist to soften your truth so others can swallow it without discomfort. Your job is not to make yourself small so others never have to stretch. Your job is to hold your posture, to stand by what is real for you, regardless of how that truth might ripple out into the world. Here is the quiet, unyielding power in all of this. People begin to respect what they cannot predict. They respect the one who does not rush to justify, who does not explain away every choice or react to every provocation. They respect what they cannot pull into their storms, cannot tangle in their chaos. Your silence gains weight. Your presence grows heavier. When your words become rare, they become valuable. When your reactions disappear, people learn that your attention is earned, not assumed. Your absence becomes a lesson. Because silence is not emptiness, it is elevation. It is a signal to the world that you are done dancing for approval, done explaining your worth, done feeding what only drains. You become, in your restraint, a force to be reckoned with, a reminder that the truest strength is found not in volume, but in quiet, unwavering self-command. And from that place of silence, you rise. The observer wins the war. When you finally stop volunteering for every emotional skirmish, when you decline the invitation to every argument, every drama, every minor battle that beckons, you begin to see the world through a new lens. The noise that once seemed so urgent, so personal, starts to sound different. You notice just how much of it is generated by people who cannot stand the weight of their own silence. So they fill the air with conflict, provocation, agitation, not because these things truly matter, but because they offer a distraction from the emptiness inside. So you choose a different posture. You become the observer. You step back, not out of withdrawal, but out of wisdom. You watch as others scramble to fill the void with noise. You listen, but not to defend yourself or to gather ammunition for your next retort. You simply receive, without bracing for attack, without preparing your own offensive. You remain still while others twist themselves into knots, swept up by storms they created. And in that stillness, the truth stands revealed. From a distance, everything becomes clearer. Patterns appear, old wounds acting out, insecurities masquerading as aggression, the endless cycle of seeking validation through conflict. You see it all, the need to win at any cost, the desperation to be seen as right, the struggle to avoid the terror of looking inward. What once felt like personal assault is now revealed as projection, as self-battle, as pain searching for a place to land. Most people are not fighting you. They are fighting their own ghosts, their unhealed wounds, their restless fears. You just happen to be close enough to become a convenient target. When you refuse to swing back, you end the cycle. You realize that just because you are within reach does not mean you are responsible for their battles. That is the line between reaction and observation. The one who reacts is always at the mercy of someone else's storm. Their mood, their words, their wounds become your master. But the one who observes, who holds the line, who refuses to be baited, remains sovereign, free. Your silence in the face of chaos is not a sign of surrender or weakness. It is a deliberate act, a strategy. It turns every interaction into a moment of truth. When you do not engage, others must reveal themselves, must show you their true motives, their level of discipline, the source of their agitation. Some unravel, their patterns suddenly exposed. Some rise, confronted by their own reflection in your calm. Observation is intelligence. In silence, you gather information, real insight into who you are dealing with, what matters and what doesn't, where the true battle lies. In reaction, you forfeit that clarity. You become as blind as those who flail without aim, shooting arrows at shadows. So you remain the quiet one, not because you are fragile or afraid or incapable of fighting, but because you understand the cost of wasted energy. You do not waste arrows on shadows, nor do you throw yourself into battles that will never be won, because they were never really yours to fight. This is the true advantage of the observer. Victory does not come from force, but from understanding. The observer always wins the war, not by overpowering, not by dominating, but by seeing clearly, by remaining unshaken while others exhaust themselves in battles against their own reflection, by letting the noise pass while you remain rooted, calm, perceptive, and free. In the end, it is the quiet one, the one who waits, who watches, who chooses their response with care, who shapes the outcome. Not through reaction, but through mastery. Not through noise, but through the silent strength of understanding. You are not your urge. There is a moment almost imperceptible, a narrow gap carved into the river of experience. A brief crack in time between the first spark of emotion and the inevitable movement of reaction. It is so swift, so subtle, that most never notice it. One instant, they feel something. The very next, they become something. The feeling of anger rushes in, and suddenly they are anger itself. Jealousy flickers, and it overtakes them. Fear appears, and they are running before they know why. The emotion arrives with such force that it feels like an order, a command to move, to defend, to strike, to escape. But in that fleeting, invisible space, that narrow gap between emotion and action, your greatest strength is waiting to be discovered. You are not your urges. You are not the hot spike of anger that shoots up your spine and floods your vision. You are not the sudden ache of fear that tightens your chest and quickens your breath. You are not the impulse that shouts to be released, demanding expression, demanding chaos. No, you are the one who observes it all. You are the awareness behind the flame, the silent witness to the storm. When the urge rises, you do not leap blindly into its fire. You breathe. You pause. You let the emotion flicker, burn, twist without allowing it to become a wildfire that consumes you. You allow the surge to exist, but you do not hand it the reins. And in that pause, in that single breath of distance, you reclaim your throne. You step back into the command seat of your own mind, refusing to be dethroned by reflex or passion. Most people never find this space. They are so fused to their emotional weather that they lose all sense of separation. The first feeling to knock is the one that wears their face for the rest of the day. They do not experience anger. They are anger. They do not feel jealousy. They become it. They are carried by the current, dragged by the waves, never realizing there was a choice. But you are different. You notice the knock. You recognize that emotion is a visitor, not a master. You feel it approach, but you choose whether or not to open the door. That is the secret of mastery, not the extinction of emotion, but the refusal to kneel to it. This is not numbness, but navigation. Not emptiness, but clarity. You do not freeze yourself to become untouchable. Instead, you become skillful. You feel the emotion, honor its presence, learn its message, but you decide how to respond. You hold the line. You keep your seat. You stay sovereign in your own inner world. And as you continue this practice, something remarkable happens. The urges once so insistent, so overpowering, begin to learn from your discipline. They come to know you cannot be broken easily. They realize you do not bend at the first sign of discomfort, nor do you move simply because they wish it. The emotions themselves begin to change. They stop trying to command you and start waiting to serve you. They become signals, not orders, sources of information, not sources of control. Your anger becomes a compass for boundaries. Your fear becomes a signal for caution, not paralysis. Your sadness becomes a teacher, not a jailer. You become the master of your own house. And in this mastery, you gain the rarest kind of freedom, the ability to act not from compulsion, but from conscious, deliberate choice. You are not your urges. You are the one who chooses. And in that, you become unstoppable. Train the pause before the flame. There is nothing more formidable in this world than the person who does not ignite at the first spark. The world is full of people who explode at the slightest friction, who erupt when their pride is grazed or their patience tested. It's easy to raise your voice, to lose your composure, to let your feelings flood every room you enter. Anyone can do that. Anyone can let the smallest tension become an inferno. Anyone can unravel, letting emotions take the helm whenever the winds change. But to pause, to hold your ground and breathe through the fire, to remain unmoved when every nerve in your body is demanding you lash out, run, defend, attack, that is rare. That is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. That is discipline perfectly disguised as calm. This kind of composure is not an accident, nor is it a gift handed to a chosen few. It is a skill, a discipline that you must train as faithfully as a warrior sharpens his blade. Not once, not every so often, but daily, in the smallest, most unremarkable moments. Every day becomes your training ground. You practice the pause when someone interrupts your train of thought, trying to seize your attention for their own agenda. You practice when you are misjudged, when someone labels you unfairly or assumes the worst. You practice when someone tries to provoke you, poking at your boundaries, hoping to draw you into a fight. In these moments, the old impulse rises, the urge to react, to defend, to shout, to scorch the earth. But instead of feeding the flame, you study it. You learn to become the observer of your own heat. You notice the sensation, the tightening in your chest, the racing of your mind, the urge to speak or act without thinking, but you don't become the anger. You examine it. You allow it to burn without consuming you, because the instant you can observe your anger instead of becoming it, you have already claimed victory. The battle is won the moment you see your emotion as a wave to surf, not a command to obey. Most people never reach this place. They remain hostages to their own chemistry, prisoners of reactions they don't understand. They burn bridges in seconds that take years to rebuild. They speak words that echo with regret. They break things, relationships, trust, opportunities that cannot be repaired, not out of malice, but because they have never learned to master the pause. You will not be among them. You will pause. You will observe. You will choose. You will become the sculptor of your own life, not its victim. You will build intention into the gaps between stimulus and response. You will learn that the small victories each time you breathe instead of break are the stones that pave the path to greatness. The pause before the flame is where you transform from ordinary to extraordinary, from fragile to unbreakable. It is where you stop living as a servant to every emotional surge and begin living as a sovereign over your inner world. This is the discipline that separates those who are swept away by life from those who shape it. This is the pause that forges character, that makes you not only calm in chaos, but powerful, capable of acting with wisdom when others can only react in fear. In mastering this pause, you become more than just calm. You become unstoppable. There is a silence that doesn't shrink you, but sharpens you. A silence that is less like absence and more like the sharpening of a blade before battle. There is a solitude that does not weaken, but rebuilds layer by layer, day by day, away from the gaze and the grasp of those who would rather keep you as you were. When you withdraw, you don't become less. You become more. You return to yourself, to your core, to the standards you once let slip. You reclaim your time, the hours and energy that once vanished into the noise of others' demands. You recenter your thoughts, bringing them back from the far reaches of distraction, refocusing on what actually matters. You realign with your own principles, remembering the truth of who you are and what you will no longer compromise. In that withdrawal, the external static begins to fade. The manipulations lose their grip. The pressure to please, to perform, to conform becomes faint and irrelevant. The false urgency of the world, its deadlines, its judgments, its petty competitions dissolves into the background where it belongs. Of course, the world will misunderstand. They will call your silence isolation. They will say you are avoiding life, hiding from challenge, running from engagement. Let them talk. They mistake your absence for weakness, not realizing it is the prelude to your greatest strength. But you know better. You are not vanishing, you are calibrating. You are not hiding, you are hardening, becoming unbreakable in your solitude. You are not retreating, you are rearming, gathering the wisdom and discipline needed for your next evolution. Most people never master themselves because they are addicted to being seen. They would rather be constantly visible, even if it means being constantly drained, than risk disappearing for a season and emerging changed. They fear what they might find in their own company. They confuse the absence of an audience with the absence of power. But you understand the secret that only the strongest learn. Sometimes you must disappear, not to wither, but to become what cannot be shaken again. You choose to withdraw, not as an act of surrender, but as an act of supreme self-respect. You choose invisibility so you can regenerate, so you can fortify yourself away from the noise, so you can emerge on your own terms, not because you must, but because you decide to. Because when you return, you do not come back seeking validation or asking for a seat at someone else's table. You come back carrying your own table, your own standards, your own boundaries. You come back built, not from applause or attention, but from your own deliberate work in the quiet work that no one saw but that changed everything. You bring a storm behind your eyes, a steadiness in your voice, and a power that does not announce itself but is impossible to ignore. So let the world wonder where you went. Let them imagine you vanished. You know the truth. You have been remaking yourself in silence, and you will never be moved again. The quiet one builds the strongest walls. Noise is the favored camouflage of weakness. Watch closely, and you'll see it. The ones who shout the loudest are usually those with the most to prove and the least to stand on. The ones who constantly interrupt, who scramble to fill the air with their opinions, who can't let a single silence pass, these are the ones wrestling most violently with their own restless minds. Those who mock, provoke, belittle, they create nothing of substance. Their energy is spent tossing stones, not building anything real. Let them. While they shout, you build. While they posture, you prepare. You work quietly, relentlessly, out of the spotlight and away from the chaos. Every ignored insult becomes another brick in your foundation. Every clever retort you choose not to say becomes cement, reinforcing the walls around your peace. Every silent retreat, every moment you walk away instead of engaging is a reinforcement, a lesson, a strengthening of your inner discipline. You are not passive. You are building. You are constructing a mental fortress that cannot be stormed by the petty, the noisy, the untrained. You are not wasting energy trying to be heard by those who refuse to listen or trying to win battles that leave you empty and unchanged. Instead, you invest your time where it matters on yourself, on your vision, on your silent ascent. Every stone thrown at you becomes a step higher. Every distraction you ignore becomes another layer of insulation. And while others exhaust themselves trying to tear you down with words, you are rising steadily, silently, and inevitably above the noise. Still, untouchable, prepared. Let them underestimate your quiet. Let them believe that silence is submission, that restraint is weakness, that not responding is the same as not noticing. They don't know because they've never met someone who didn't need to be seen, who wasn't addicted to attention, who found power not in noise, but in self-command. You're not here to win applause. You're not here to gather a crowd or feed the shallow hunger for validation. You're here for transformation, yours and yours alone. You understand that real progress is not made in the echo chambers of public opinion, but in the disciplined silence of self-improvement. While others demand to be seen, you focus on becoming impossible to shake. And when the dust settles, when the noise has faded and the crowds have drifted to the next distraction, it will not be the loudest who remain standing. It will be the builders. The ones who labored in silence, who grew in discipline, who learned to control their emotions instead of being controlled by them. The quiet ones. The ones who understood that noise cannot touch a mind fortified by purpose, nor can chaos invade a fortress built from patience and restraint. So let them shout. Let them hurl their stones. Let them mistake your silence for surrender. You know the truth. Every moment you spend in disciplined quiet is another moment you grow stronger, higher, calmer. And when the world finally looks up, it will see what the noise could never destroy a person who rose, not by being loud, but by being unbreakable. This is your work. This is your path. Keep building quietly, relentlessly, until the only thing left standing is the strength you forged in silence. Emotion is a tool, not a throne. Feelings are real, there is no denying that. They arrive with force, coloring your thoughts and shaping the way the world appears. They can be so vivid, so convincing, that they seem to contain truth itself. But here is what most never learn. Feelings are not always right. They are the weather systems of the mind, powerful, dramatic, ever-changing, and often deceptive. One moment a storm, the next a sudden calm, followed by an unexpected wind. Emotions can guide you, yes, warning you of danger, or calling your attention to something that matters, but they cannot be allowed to govern your life. They may inform your decisions, but they must never dictate them. You were not made to kneel before every mood that sweeps through you. You were not built to be at the mercy of every internal storm. You were crafted with the capacity to feel deeply, but also with the power to decide wisely. This is the secret that separates those who are ruled by emotion from those who rule themselves. Emotion is a tool, not a throne. You are meant to use it, not be used by it. But most people don't realize this. They mistake emotion for commandment. They become servants to every feeling that passes through their mind. When irritation arises, they obey it, snapping, lashing out, scattering their peace. When sadness visits, they bow, retreating into shadows, letting gloom dictate their every move. When anger surges, they explode, and then plead with the world to understand the wreckage left behind. But you are different. You acknowledge the feeling as it arrives. You let it speak. You give it space. You listen to the story it tells, knowing it is not always the full story. And then, with presence and discipline, you choose your response. You do not trust every thought your fear whispers. You do not follow every order your rage commands. You let emotions pass through you like wind through an open window. You feel them fully, but you do not become them. You remain rooted, unmoved at your center. This is not repression. It is not the cold denial of your inner world. It is precision, a conscious shaping of your emotional landscape. You don't sever emotion from your experience. You give it purpose. You direct its force. You don't kill the fire within. You harness it, forging a blade sharp enough to cut through confusion and illusion. For once you learn to master your emotions, everything changes. You no longer fight against your feelings or run from them. You simply do not kneel to them. You direct them, channeling anger into action, sadness into insight, fear into caution without paralysis. You allow your feelings to serve your highest purpose, not sabotage it. In this, you rise above. You are no longer seated beneath the weight of every mood, buffeted by every storm. You sit above your emotions, not as a tyrant, but as a masterful steward. This is the true mark of maturity. To feel fully, but to decide with wisdom. To let emotions visit, but not rule. To use their energy, but never be swept away. Now, finally, you are no longer a subject of your inner weather. You have become the one who commands the skies. The calm one controls the room. The world has always measured strength in decibels. It equates volume with power, mistaking the loudest voice for the dominant one. The one who yells over others is crowned the leader. The one who commands attention through noise is assumed to control the space. In every arena, boardroom, living room, public stage, the performance of force is mistaken for the substance of it. But look closer. Watch, not with your ears, but with your eyes. It is not the loud one who holds true power, it is the calm one. The one who stands unshaken when tempers flare. The one who listens, who studies the room, who refuses to flinch even as chaos rises all around. The one whose words are measured, whose presence is undeniable, not because it shouts, but because it doesn't have to. Calm is never weakness. Calm is command of self, of situation, of outcome. It is the rarest kind of control, mastery over your own impulses, your own nerves, your own mind. That is the strength most people never learn to recognize, let alone respect. When you walk into a room, you don't need to perform. You don't need to scramble for attention or raise your voice to be heard. Your presence carries weight because your energy is settled, still, unforced. There is a quiet gravity to you, a magnetic field that draws others in, not because you demand their gaze, but because your calm suggests a depth that noise cannot match. You do not chase influence, you become it. Others perform for the spotlight, talking quickly, gesturing wildly, dominating every conversation with restless energy. They mistake frenetic movement for momentum, mistaking a full airspace for true control. You do the opposite. You breathe. You observe. You hold your center even as the world spins. You speak only when the silence has served its purpose, when your words can land with maximum impact. And when you finally do speak, every ear turns, every eye focuses, every mind listens, because they know you do not waste words. They know that your calm is not an act you put on for the world. It is a code you live by, an inner law you uphold, whether seen or unseen. This is how true authority is earned, not through bluster, but through backbone, not through charisma that flickers, but through consistency that endures. The calm one controls the room not because they clamor for attention, but because they do not need it. Their energy is its own magnet, their restraint its own signal. In a world where everyone is scrambling to be noticed, fighting to be heard, desperate to be seen, real power lies in not needing any of it. The more you need the spotlight, the less you truly command it. The less you need to be heard, the more people strain to listen. Let this be the final echo. Silence is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is strength. It is sovereignty. It is the mark of one who rules themselves, who is the master of their own state, and that always, without exception, is where all real power begins. So do not be seduced by the world's fixation on volume. Let others perform their noise. You hold your center. You embody the calm that cannot be shaken, the stillness that cannot be stormed. Because the one who commands the self commands everything.